Hello, world. Welcome, welcome. This is the Culture Clinic show where we help people leaders shape great workplace culture so that your people love where they work. My name is Joe. I'm the co-founder here at Gusto and have been working with HR professionals for about 10 years now to help them build recognition programs to really shape great culture. And here with my esteemed colleague, Shelly DaCosta. Maybe a quick intro, Shelly.
Hi, everybody. Really thrilled to be here as well. Worked in a lot of organizations from the public sector, like hospitals and healthcare, to private sector startups like BlackBerry and finance sector, insurance companies, as well as a few gigs consulting and teaching. Always in the reward space. So, really happy here to talk about culture today with Joe at Gusto.
Yeah, and Shelly has a true depth of knowledge, just an amazing career. And so the format for this is ask us anything. And when I say ask us, I kind of mean ask Shelly. But if you have questions, just put your questions for Shelly in the chat, whether that's LinkedIn or on YouTube, and they can be related to people and culture, total rewards, recognition, best practices, etc. However, to sort of guide the conversation and kind of kick things off, we do have a topic, and that topic today is fixing broken culture. So, with that, why don't we kind of lead off, Shelly, and just talk a little bit about what does a broken culture actually look like?
Why? So I guess not just depending on the organization, across many organizations, it can take many forms. A broken culture can look like lack of direction in the organization. It can exhibit as lack of values. People don't cooperate. They're not cooperating. There's a lack of trust amongst people, leaders in the organization. People not feeling psychologically safe in a lot of cases. And in many cases, it evidences itself as organizations like moving in multiple directions, all with no kind of defined goals, or almost set adrift. And so, I mean, different people will identify different things as broken culture, and it'll mean different ways and exhibit in different ways for different people. I think
Yeah, and
you've
I
got an
feel
example.
what's that, Shelly? Sorry, go
I
ahead.
think you've got an example at Gusto about culture.
Yeah, I do, and in kind of like in advance of the session here, we were kind of just chatting through, and so what came to mind for me was a really a great example at Gusto, and so even to preface that, so Simon Sinek, who many of you probably know, he's written all sorts of books. Start with Why, Infinite Game. He defines culture as culture equals values plus behaviors, and so I really believe that culture is a set of values and people's embodiment of those values. And so, thinking back to early Gusto days, like 10 years ago, candidly, our culture wasn't awesome. And it definitely wasn't toxic though, but it was broken. Right? Because I don't think that it has to be toxic to be broken. And so at the time, early days, we really didn't have sort of like this clear set of values. And even if we didn't really have a way of sort of applying any methodology for understanding whether people were living our values. And it was really like we weren't bad people. We were just like so focused on survival. We were, creating the product and trying to sell the product. And that was our sole focus. And we kind of like missed culture.
Right.
And so the big gut punch was my co-founder Skay. He was actually, online Googling, reviews about Gusto. We wanted to like get a pulse of, what people were saying about the product. And he stumbled onto a 1-star Glassdoor review. It was by, a previous employee who, just really did not have a great experience working at Gusto. And it was such a gut punch at the time, but it was possibly the best thing that could have happened to us. And that was really our ironic epiphany. It was the moment that we realized that if we wanted to really succeed, we first had to build an amazing culture where people wanted to and loved to work. And again, the irony here is we were selling employee recognition tools, but we weren't using them internally. And so we switched our focus to becoming a people-first organization. focusing on recognizing our people for demonstrating clear values and intentionally shaping our culture. And so since that time, we've more than tripled our headcount, and we're on track to 10x our revenue by the end of the year since that moment in time. And so we are living proof that culture is, not just unicorns and rainbows, but in fact, the ultimate competitive advantage.
That's a great story, because it shows too that it's not so much your culture might have even been broken, it was missing. You hadn't thought about the fact that, hey, we need to think about this and decide what it's going to be and then drive towards it, and communicate it to our employees and let them understand that this is what we stand for. This is what we're going to be focusing on. These are our values. This is how we want to behave to one another, to our customers, to our clients, all the way through.
1000%. You can't leave culture to chance.
Exactly.
Right? You got to be intentional. Yeah.
Cool.
So
broken culture can come in like so many forms. It can be because it's missing. I also find it fascinating the amount of companies that will feel that their organization, the culture is broken because they have multiple cultures. And they might have multiple cultures because they have some very different teams and objectives and departments. Or they might have multiple cultures because they've grown through acquisitions over the years or mergers, and companies were allowed to kind of just keep their culture. And I think it's important to think about the fact that that doesn't necessarily mean it's broken. Some can quite coexist quite well in an organization. Like there's an acquisition, and this company acquires this company, and they do have different cultures, but their values and their behaviors and how they want to conduct their business is very similar, and they can align and they can coexist together. And so that's not necessarily broken. I think they just want to keep checks on it and watch it and see. And if it starts to have problems with employees where they're kind of like, well, if I was working for this leader in this organization, this is okay. And if I'm working for that leader in this organization, that's not okay. That's when you've got some issues you want to kind of dig into and find out about. Mm-hmm. And I think it's quite common to have, it feels a little bit different when I work over here, and it feels a little bit different when I work over there. But at the end of the day, what we tolerate and what our behaviors are and our values are going to be consistent.
So I actually think that comment is a great segue into our first question. So this one came in from Jonathan. My company is having a hard time getting departments to work together. They're constantly at odds with how to approach situations, and I'm wondering what we can do.
I'm going to push that one back to you, Joe. When you have that, because you've grown, right? Look at what's happened over the course of the last year and where you're at. Now you've got, a culture where you've set it out, like how you want to behave and your employees. But how do you get employees in various departments to work together?
Yeah, I think that, we've done a few things here at Gusto, in an effort to improve cross department collaboration. And we've been very intentional about these things. And so we try to get people to interact regularly in work and social environments. And when I say work and social, I actually believe that we can have social environments at work. It doesn't necessarily mean like going out for drinks, right? So there's a few things that have worked really well for us. A couple things that come to mind. So we actually have scheduled cross-department overlap meetings. So an obvious one would be we're bringing sales, marketing, and customer success together in a collaborative discussion every week to talk about, sort of that end-to-end experience, the buyer journey through to the customer journey, and getting aligned on, things that are relevant through buyer to customer. And then on the, sort of more social side, we're doing things like creating committees, like a social committee that is made up of people from different departments. They're interacting in a social way, a bit of a fun way. They're not just, thinking about the nuts and bolts of, a project or, things that are a little bit more serious. Huge shout out to our people team that, put together regular virtual and in-person team activities. And then, something we do that's been really, really effective, and it's just such a small thing, but again, it's been great, is we have a weekly all hands meeting. And at the start of the meeting, before we really get into anything, we actually have breakout rooms. And so we break out, 5 to 7 people, and people can just kind of shoot the breeze and connect on a human level, talk about the weekend, talk about the holidays, talk about vacation plans. And the feedback there has been, really, really good. And so I think that creating those environments where people can connect on a social level as well as sort of in the work level, it actually the social level bleeds into sort of like these work interactions where, hey, now we're a little bit more human rather than just like the sales and marketing department. Now we're coming together. So yeah, those are some things that we've done at Gusto that I think have been really impactful.
Great ideas. It's an excellent answer to Jonathan's question. I think the only other piece that he could look at is the leadership of the organization and whether they're modeling that kind of team cooperative type of behavior, right? So, you can put in all of these meetings and this training and have your employees trying to work hard together. But if they're looking up and the senior leadership team is at odds, or the senior leadership team are not modeling that cooperative team behavior, you've got some issues you're going to have to dig at. So I think that's always a really good lens to take a look at as well.
So much starts with the leaders, right?
Absolutely.
Well, another great segue here. There's a question from Shannon, and I have a feeling that you're going to touch a little bit on the leadership side here. So question is, Shelley, I've had a new employee approach me about some unwelcoming behavior from our more senior staff members. I don't want this to be an employee's experience, but I'm unsure how to fix it.
Okay. Those are tough ones. And, you can see the scenario. They come to human resources and say, hey, this happened. And what do I do? Because it's a senior staff member and probably a not senior. It's a new employee. So they're come to this organization thinking, wait a second, is this how people treat people? Is this how, the kind of behavior I'm going to expect on a day-to-day basis? And so you as HR need to go in and deal with this. Or you could be a leader that the employees brought this to. I think first you want to kind of take a step back and look at where the unwelcoming behaviors come from and what you know about that person, right? And so is there a cultural issue? Is there what are the issues around why this could be happening? Have they had that kind of training or diversity, inclusivity, your human rights training, all of those kinds of things that could tip in terms of why this is happening, and they don't realize that that's not appropriate. It's not how we speak to one another. It's not how we approach things. That's not our workplace, etc. But what's in place for that, and what kind of training have they had? Where have they worked before? All of that. And I think you have to address it right away. You have to go in and have that conversation. You have to look at what your onboarding mechanisms are. A lot of times, a lot of organizations have great onboarding training programs, put you through all of this for all their current and new employees. Senior leaders come on board and we just assume they've had that kind of training. They've had human rights issues. They've had all of that in past lives, etc. And that may not be the case. And so it's to kind of understand that and make sure that kind of thing is in place. And then what kind of mentoring is there actually for those senior members? Like, is there a partner, a buddy system, somebody else on the senior executive team that you can have those open, honest conversations with? Maybe it's you in human resources that's going to take that on with that senior executive to kind of say, we don't do this. And you need to be strong HR here. This is where you're really pushing the values of the organization and what you will and will not tolerate in the organization. And so that's why, if you've got the culture, you've got the vision, you've got the values, I always say to people, where you can document those, there's a lot of proof that that's helpful because you can hold people to that standard and explain it. But I think it's important to just kind of first understand where they may be coming from.
Yeah. You kind of touched on a few things that resonated. And I think about a few things that have happened here. So first one, by no means am I suggesting that HR is the silver bullet, but I think and believe that having a really strong HR people leader can be very helpful in this situation. And when I say strong, someone who will challenge other leaders around, behaviors and how we interact with the people we work with. Because sometimes there's simply a lack of awareness,
exactly.
Right? That person may not be a bad person. They just may not be aware. And so I actually have a story. But before the story, the other thing I think of is, and you touched on it, at Gusto, we have policies in place. So there's not really ambiguity around like what's appropriate and what's not. And so, at risk of like over policying, I do think it is very important to sort of have a piece of paper where people can go and see like these are the expectations around how you're sort of like operating in the workplace. And so thinking about something that happened at Gusto, and it's like kind of embarrassing because it's a story about me. We hired an amazing head of people, Noah. And on his first day, I introduced him to the whole team as our handsome new people leader, Noah. And I was just a bit daft at the time. Like we were growing very fast. This is our first HR leader. We were very much in sort of like startup operation mode, early days. And I didn't really think. And he immediately messaged me. Imagine like your first day and you've got to like immediately message the founder of the company saying like completely inappropriate. And I just paused and was like, oh my God, I have so much to learn. So I have gotten a lot better, and Noah has taught me, many things about sort of appropriate and not appropriate. And again, not a bad person, I believe, truly, but just, in some instances, lacked awareness.
Yeah. I think it's in those situations too, you want to assume positive intent, right? You didn't mean any harm by it or anything like that. You want to assume that the person doesn't know any better or just didn't think. Sometimes we just kind of forget little parts of our brains especially when we're introducing people. I think it's the same as walking through a doorway and forgetting why I went through there. That might just be my age. But it's when you go to introduce somebody and then you kind of can't remember their name, or you put something like that and think you're being complimentary. But I think so. It's to approach this situation and not to make light of it, because this can be a very, very heavy situation in an organization. But like you said, where you've got those policies and guidelines and a strong HR that's going to turn around and go, this isn't okay. And this is how it made me feel, or this is how it made that employee feel. And I know, you wouldn't do it again, but here we go, that kind of thing. And again, with the policies, like you said, you don't want to over policy, but everybody learns differently. So some people are going to want, a training session on it. Some people are going to want to see the guidebook and go through the policies. And some people are going to want to talk to somebody around, well, is it okay if I do this? And what about if I do that, etc.
Yeah. And, one thing that Noah has done, again, our head of people, Noah has done a great job of is, when he needs to sort of like chime in and give maybe a strong opinion around a do or don't, that is usually backed up by a why. Here's why we don't want to be doing that. And that's usually where the aha moment comes in, rather than just don't do it. It's like, don't do it and why.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
That's good. Yeah. Great story, and thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Definitely trying to get a little bit better every day, Okay, so just keeping an eye on the clock here. Let's keep moving through some questions here. So this one came in from Dawn. We have a set of company values, but I don't feel they're being reflected in the day-to-day operations of our team. How can we have our values better reflected?
Wow. So I think it's really important to do a little check on, do your employees know what the values are? Have they, you've got them, right? Somewhere somebody's devised these and set them up. How well have you communicated them? And again, we have to communicate 5 times before we can assume everybody's understanding it, or 5 different methods as well, because we're all going to learn things differently. Have you posted them? How available are they to new employees? Do new employees know it? And I guess the other thing is to build that discussion into one-on-ones. So again, here I'm going to pull on leaders. Do the leaders understand those values? Are the leaders modeling those values and behaviors? And are they talking about them with their employees? Because that's a great opportunity. Your one-on-ones with employees is a great opportunity to regularly have leaders talk about important things in the organization and ensure that the employees aligned with those things, like values. So are you aware of this? And have you had examples where there feels like there's any misalignment between you and I around our values? So we can talk about them, and we can talk about how we can deal with that. And that opens up the door to a great conversation about why values are important in the organization, why those values were devised in the first place, why it's important to them, and the impact those values have on the company as a whole and how successful the company is. Because maybe those values are how they treat the customers, or those values are how they treat clients or the suppliers or whatever. They can be very concrete and specific to the organization.
Yeah. And, when I think about our clients that have sort of like amazing cultures, some
Yes.
of they are really thinking about, how do we weave our values into our DNA, right? So values up on the wall, hey, that's great and all. There are a lot of companies now that don't have walls. So what are we going to
Yeah,
do, right?
exactly.
The values in your employee
Dashboard.
handbook. What's that? Sorry.
It's on your dashboard. Sorry to interrupt, right? It's on your
It
Slack. You
is.
log
It
in,
is.
when you log in, there it is.
Yeah, and so like I think it's really important to think about those things, right? Like it can't just live in the employee handbook, can't just live up on the wall. Um, some things that we've done at Gusto to really build values into our DNA, and the impact has been tremendous. We really build values into our hiring process. So when we post a job, we are clearly articulating our values. And what that is doing is it's actually attracting better fit candidates, because it's attracting people that have a shared set of values. Um, and so the candidates that we're receiving are a better fit for us, right? And we're trying to add people through culture and not like hire the same person. But again, I think that the values do need to resonate across um, your employee base. So further to that, once we're in the interview process, we're building the values conversation right into our hiring. And then, of course, we've created a rewards and recognition program built around those values. And then, as you kind of talked about, sort of like the importance of building values into one-on-ones, we build values into our peer and manager reviews, as well as the one-on-one conversations. And then every week we're highlighting core values at our all hands meeting. And so it's something that is just like,
Absolutely.
we're beating the team to death with the values, because everyone needs to know what they are. And I truly believe that it works. And it's not like values overkill. It's just everyone needs to be reminded what's important.
A lot of companies use their recognition programs to support the values, or even to launch the recognition program, they'll use their values, or vice versa, right? Because, we've got this new set of values and we want to live and breathe them. We want employees to understand them. So what we're going to do is start to watch when employees are exhibiting those behaviors or adhering to our values, and we're going to reward and recognize it. We're going to recognize it right away, with whether it's peer to peer or a recognition program and gift cards, whatever. It could be leader to leader, it could be peer to peer, all that. There's some huge opportunities there to get your values out, to get your values integrated into the organization, and for people to understand them and to really live them.
For sure. And not only is it an opportunity to reinforce those values through real-time recognition, whether that's peer-to-peer or top-down, but a sophisticated recognition tool should have tracking mechanisms in place, so that leaders can go and actually have insights into what values are being lived and what values need some work.
Right. Yeah. What you want to promote, what's going on. Exactly.
Totally.
Yeah,
All right.
excellent matrix.
Let's shift gears just a little bit here, Shelley. Here's another question. So since last year, we've been trying to adjust our company culture, but we're receiving pushback from our team. How can we show them why culture is important? And so even before you jump in, I'd be curious to know here, can you give us maybe a few examples of what pushback looks like?
The pushback could be, depending on the organization and this person's question, it may be different in their organization, but quite often pushback can look like apathy amongst the employees. They don't want to attend sessions. They're not coming to the training programs. They're not coming to the social events. They're not showing up at the all hands meetings. They just kind of don't care, right? They're tired and they're just not paying attention to that. They're not, so it's kind of like a subversive pushback. right? Or even you'll see it in engagement survey scores, or even participation in engagement surveys and feedback and group sessions, all of that, right? So all of those metrics you're kind of looking for. And a lot of pushback can be in change in the organization. So, because your culture will grow and change as you grow and change as an organization. And so you've got kind of the old culture, and you might even have the old guard that's kind of maintaining that culture. And now the organization is going to shift. It's going to have a different product, or it's going to work in a different way, or it's going to go into different markets, etc. And you have a bit of a new guard, and you can see that pushback there amongst senior leaders. You can see it amongst employees. Well, we always did it this way and it worked for us. Look where it got us. I don't want to embrace that new things. Why do we have to change? Right. So pushback can take many different forms. Those are just a few of what I've seen in organizations, because organizations, BlackBerry is a great example of the culture as we grew and became very large, and then the culture as we shrunk and became quite small.
Hmm. Okay, so that's some great context. So how can we show our people why culture is important?
Oh, wow. Well, that's really important. And you can't not pay attention to this one. You can't afford to not pay attention to a broken culture, and why, right? And sometimes you may have organizations where people are like, oh, those are those HR or soft human skills, and we don't have to really worry about culture, because what's it okay, great, everybody's going to get along, and it's nicer if people get along, and is that what it but there's so much more to culture. So you have to look at, first of all, the impact, and show people that impact, because that'll help them understand what's important. So the impact that a toxic culture can have on your organization, the impact a toxic culture can have on retention, productivity, employee engagement, trust between employees and leaders, etc. And you'll need to pull some metrics there. In HR, hopefully you've got access to metrics within your organization, your engagement scores, your surveys, your recognition tool, etc. And even external data sources to kind of show the impact that a positive culture can have on engagement, retention, corporate success. And then if your culture is also based around your clients and your customers, or even your staffing and your suppliers, and how you will treat them, right? Those are very business specific. And so if you don't have people adhering to that, they're not going to be treating your customers the way you want to treat your customers within that culture. They're not setting you up for success
Hmm.
in a very real business sense.
Yeah,
Nothing.
and sort of building on the business side. I mean, Gusto's living proof, right? That culture is not just unicorns and rainbows. Like, yes, there are social and personal benefits of working in a place with great culture where people feel safe, but there are real business and career opportunities that open up for people. And again, Gusto's a great example, right? Since we focused on being a people first company, we've more than tripled our headcount. We're closing in on 10xing our revenue. And this has led to all sorts of job and career opportunities for people, people that weren't in the organization, and then also just career growth within the organization for people that were, here as we were making that shift. So we've been able to demonstrate to our people the impact of great culture. Again, not just in creating an environment where people feel safe to bring their whole selves to work, but also in the opportunities that are being provided in their career.
Absolutely. Right.
Cool. Well, look at us. We're almost half past. We're kind of like bang on time here. Before we sign off, Shelley, I've kind of been jotting some notes down, but perhaps we want to take one or two key takeaways for the watchers and listeners. And
I want to just address the one point. I kind of can't not have that, definition of culture as the behaviors you will not tolerate in an organization, right? Steve Grunert and Todd Whitaker came up with that, but I know they represented it within an academic and school setting, but businesses have kind of grabbed onto that, and the reason is because it's really important, and that is such a key piece to culture, because it's very much what is the worst behavior you will tolerate is kind of sets up your culture. And so again, back to leaders, if leaders accept poor behavior and allow it to continue in the organization, that's culture, right? And employees watch and see that all the time. So I kind of think that fits in so much with the model and what we've been talking about with broken culture.
Great. Love
So
it.
you want me to start with some of my takeaways?
Yeah, one or two key takeaways for the
Okay.
folks walking in, looking in. Yeah.
Okay. So I think the same thing I was just talking about there. You can't afford not to remedy broken culture. Right there, it's too risky to leave it alone, especially a toxic culture. If people, because people are watching, and if people don't feel safe in your organization, they won't stay. And it even extends out to outside your employees, to your customers, your clients, your suppliers, everybody that your organization touches in the organization. And being HR, I kind of can't leave without saying, we didn't talk about this specifically, but it's not HR's job to fix culture. You said starts with leader, and you're absolutely right. We can provide the framework, we can provide the data, the tools, and help navigate a broken culture, or how to fix culture, how to enforce culture in an organization. But it takes so much more than just human resources. It's not just HR's job on that front.
Yeah. Cool. Great. Great takeaways. So couple from my end. Find ways to weave values into your DNA. And, we gave some examples today, but people really do want a sense of direction in their work lives and want to work for a company that has values and sort of a moral compass. And so weaving your values into your DNA will be a really, helpful way to sort of guide people. And then, you've kind of touched on it, but leaders really do need to lead by example and walk the walk. Everything starts from the leadership and kind of trickles down. And so, leaders need to exemplify and model culture, because ultimately what our leaders do is what our people will do. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, that was a key takeaway for me.
Great.
Well, great chat, Shelley. Always thoroughly enjoy, and we're
Joe.
bang on time here. Appreciate all those who tuned in. And if you do want any more culture building content, we've got a great YouTube channel. You can head over there. We're always pumping really insightful, thoughtful material out there and content. So have a zip over there, have a look, or join us next week for our next Culture Clinic. And until then, mucho gusto.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks to you all.